you know I had not made the connection about the golden statue until you just said that? Woo!
The bunny, the bunny. Oops, I ate the bunny. That's how VeggieTales talks about this story. Rack, Shack, and Benny, and King Nebuchadnezzar and his giant golden image. Adrienne, did you ever watch VeggieTales growing up? Was that a part of your upbringing?
Well, I don't think it existed when I was growing up because
Come
I grew up
on.
in the
You're not that much older than
70s.
me.
Well, I don't know when it came out, but I didn't see it growing up, but I saw it like as a youth minister. And I love
Yeah,
VeggieTales. They're the best. The songs are
me too.
amazing.
The bunny, whoa, I love the bunny.
This conversation is about your sermon this Sunday at Riverside. There's a lot going on. We've got this little golden image of Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter
Mhm.
3, and it's the first Sunday of Advent. So take your pick. How do you want to help us think about what's happening this Sunday?
Oh my gosh, it's just a buffet of riches. There's so much happening. So we're lighting candles, right, for Sunday of Advent. We've got these three young boys in a fire, right? More light. But in the midst of occupation and oppression and terrorism. So for me, there's this notion of what is possible and what happens in dark times. And we've got all these images of light. Um, we also are using the theme for Advent at Riverside this year, what can be done while waiting. So a lot of us are sitting around, or maybe feeling like we're in a fiery furnace or feeling like we're in the darkness. And so I think this text invites some reflection on what is possible. The way that the three young boys, and they are boys, they're kids, stand in the face of power is really inspiring, not unlike what we've seen with young people around the country and the way they're witnessing to democracy. And witnessing to love of neighbor, both here and
Yeah.
in other parts of the world. I think there's a lot there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's so much. What can be done while waiting is a very appropriate question, even for, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the three characters. Those are their Babylonian names, I believe. By the way, they're colonized names. That they're Rack, Shack, and Benny is what they're called in VeggieTales. But that's a good question for them to have in the midst of that moment they find themselves in. Just to catch everyone up, in case you're like, what is this story that we're talking about with young kids being put into a fire? We're in exile, so the people of Judah, people of Israel, have been conquered, colonized, and
Mm,
exported out to Babylon. And this is Daniel, so we're used to the book of Daniel being Daniel in the lion's den. There's other
yeah.
stuff. Daniel had three good friends. That's these three guys. And they are in the king's court, in Nebuchadnezzar's court. And Nebuchadnezzar has this giant statue built of himself because who doesn't like gold plated everything in your own image? Oh, what's with rulers and that? And he's like, everyone's got to bow down and worship my statue. And these three kids are like, well, we worship the God of Israel, so no. And then the consequence is getting thrown into the fiery furnace. And they survive is the miraculous thing. And in the end, Nebuchadnezzar's like,
Right.
oh my goodness, your God is amazing. I want to convert. So that's the story in a nutshell.
You know, I had not made the connection about the golden statue until you just said that. Woo! So that shows you I have not slowed down enough. But how hilarious! How hilarious! All the gold, all the gold. Anyway,
Yep.
it's a wonderful way, I think, for us to kick off Advent. I should say that this poem, What Can Be Done While Waiting, is by a really wonderful sacred dancer. Her name is Betsy Beckman, and we've been studying it as a clergy team for the last probably, I don't know, 6 to 9 months. It's a powerful, powerful poem about unfolding. And what happens sort of underground as a root or a flower or something nourishing is coming up. And of course, it ties to the theme that Riverside has set for these next 5 years as we're on the way to our 100th anniversary. We're thinking about fruit and what's growing and what's blossoming, even in dark times. What I find interesting about the dark um, is what I learned when I was doing my CPE training. We are often told that darkness is bad and that it's not a wonderful thing or something to aspire to. But what I learned interning in the hospital with the particular supervisor I had is that for people who are trying to get well, darkness is actually a wonderful thing. So she said, the blinds are often drawn in hospital rooms because, the light may be too much for people. She talked about, challenged us to think about what are the good things that happen in the dark. And of course, babies, right? You don't want them coming out of that dark womb too early. That's not a good thing. A cake in the oven, when I was young, I don't think it happens as much now because of whatever they put in cakes, but a cake could fall, like a souffle could fall if you opened the oven before it was time. So it needed its time in the dark to get fully formed and fully baked. And then, of course, seeds, right? They need to be in that dark, warm, moist soil. And there's so much happening under the ground in the dark before we start to see, way before we start to see those shoots of life. So I love this notion as we are in this season of darkness, thinking about what is being generated, what God is doing, how God shows up in fiery places, helping us to stand strong like these three kids in the face of evil and oppression and things that we know are just not right. I love that young people are telling us. Just saw a TikTok video of a young kid, and she said, "I'm a kid," and she was talking to Megan Kelly, who, of course, was making this like, "Oh,
5-year-old versus 15-year-old distinction. What?
exactly,
Yeah.
just absolutely crazy." And the kid goes, "I'm a kid," and it's a problem if a kid has to tell a grown up that this is wrong.
Yeah.
So I just am so inspired by, appreciative of the stand. And I think my sermon title is something called Pray and Stand, because that's what these kids do. They're praying to their
Yeah.
God and they're standing up for what they believe. And they're like, and if we have to go into a fire, we're gonna stand. It's also
Yeah.
important, I think, that they have each other, that there's community there,
Hmm.
because these are scary things. I am impressed watching our young people in their groups and with their classmates or with their friend group showing up to do really courageous things together.
Yeah. And that's been true for so much, it seems, of history. I think
Yeah,
of so much of the civil rights movements with the
yeah,
sit-ins,
yeah,
with all of the work that went into SNCC and all the organizing with young people, college students from all over the country going to these places and putting themselves in these places, and then obviously the March for Our Lives, Parkland, Florida, we
right,
continue to
right,
see it. Greta Thunberg is one
right.
of many examples of
Yeah,
a young person who still continues to do this work. Yeah, and it's like us old folk got to be like, oh yeah, why did we sit down and slow down and stop? Or why do we try to slow them down when we should
right,
be the ones fanning that flame and getting out of the
right,
way and platforming them and using our privilege
right.
and power and wisdom and experience so that they can go faster and farther than we ever thought possible.
Absolutely. I also wanted to say now some of the activists that I'm inspired by. Ilhan Omar has a daughter. I think it's Isra Hirsi. She's an environmental activist as well, who moves in those same circles with Greta Thunberg. But some of the organized groups of young people, Jewish Voices for Peace, are doing extraordinary work. There's another group called If Not Now, When. So yes, so many groups. You can Google all the groups. And I think the willingness, the humility to follow where they're leading, um, is an invitation for us older folks, as you were saying. They're
Yeah.
doing great things.
Oh, did I just admit that I'm one of the older folks on this video? My goodness, what's happening?
Definitely older, yes. The other thing I want to bring us back to, the quote that I'm using this particular week. So this is Advent. Is it
Number one.
Hope? It's Hope. That's right. Advent 1, Hope. Beautiful quote from Soren Kierkegaard from a book called Uplifting. And I think this book was written in the 1800s. It says, "Faith sees best in the dark."
Hmm.
That jumped out at me because I've been listening to the Book of Joy, which is this collaborative conversation between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And again, not to sacralize suffering, but both of them tell stories about how faith and joy are strengthened in suffering. Not that one goes looking for it, but that out of it, if you survive, there can be a deepening of your faith. And so this notion of faith seeing best in the dark, I think a lot of us, when we come to the end of our rope, when we find ourselves in a fiery furnace, when we have lost everything, very often that's when we see God, who of course is there all the time. The Footsteps poem, right? God, why did you leave me? God's like, come on, right?
I had you
I'm
over my
there all the
shoulder, kid.
Exactly. I had you over my shoulder, and we don't notice
Yeah.
often until we're in the dark, right? Until the bottom has fallen out. And I think Advent is as is Lent, but Advent is a reminder, to pause and slow down and to see a little better. You often say, like adjust our spectacles, and just notice this amazing, spectacular, never leaving God.
Yeah. Oh, well, that there is a sermon and a half right there. And I just love even the invitation. This is not the typical Advent text we're probably used to,
Right.
but when you hold it with this lens of hope, with this lens of waiting, with this lens of what can we see? How does our faith invite us to see in the dark? We have all of that happening in this story, and it just totally reflects on the moments we continue to find ourselves in every single day around us. Oh. Okay, that's Sunday. Everybody, get yourself to church. We got some good things happening, as always. So Advent candles, if you're online, get your own Advent candles. You can have them with you. Purple, purple, pink. Purple is the typical colors, but just any 4 candles will work. 4 birthday candles, 4 votives. It's all good. We're only lighting 1 this Sunday, and then the next Sunday we'll do 2, and then 3, and then 4. So it's this, cumulative effect of light continuing to break in as we look towards that birth of Christ, which, by the way, we look Christ being born again and again and again every year, not just some story that happened. That's another sermon. So join us on Sunday. Bring your candles. Open Bible study at 9:30 in the room and on Zoom. Join us in either space. We'll have a great conversation there about this text. Join us for worship. We'll have a sermon talk back after worship. If you're in the building, for those of you on site, there will be Advent Fest happening after worship, where you can make your own Advent wreaths and candles and have a way to kick off the Advent season. So if you can be at the church building itself, go enjoy a little Advent Fest with the rest of the congregation. For those online, we'll have a good time on virtual coffee hour. Leave a comment below. If you're watching this far, why don't you type in VeggieTales? Yeah, VeggieTales down below. And then you can go Google Rack, Shack, and Benny and watch that episode of VeggieTales. And you're welcome in advance. And then come join us on Sunday and we'll hear how this all takes shape. We'll see you soon, everybody.
I don't want no pickles, I don't want no honey, I just want a plate and a fork and a bunny. I don't want a tissue and my nose is runny, I just want a plate and a fork and a bunny. I don't want to tell you a joke that is funny, I just want a plate and a fork and a bunny. I don't want to play on a day that is sunny, I just want a plate and a fork and a bunny.
The bunny, whoa, I love the bunny.